Okay. Okay. Now I want to go to Forms, Google. And we're going to log in. Add another account. Productions. Okay. Okay, response is 5. Okay. It's not for you. Just to get started. Okay. I'm going to use that in the meantime. Phase to get started. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay.
Hey, Micah.
Hey, dude. Sorry, I am running around like a chicken with my head cut off today.
Yeah, same. I totally get it. I looked down and I was just picked Fives up from school, and I'm like, man, what happened to today?
Yeah, dude. I've been stuck in traffic for a bunch of it, and it's the last day of the campaign, and I'm running around, and someone's like needs help figuring out how to invest, but so that's like a good problem to have. But also, I'm like, I go live in 30 minutes.
Oh man, dude, sorry. Well, no stress on this end. I was just making sure I wasn't dropping the ball. And I'm sure we can figure it out. So
yes, I don't have any solutions now, but I have the time blocked out. So do you, I guess really what I need to do is just look at the edit tonight and see what all would be useful to shoot with Erica more than anything else. Because we have Erica tomorrow, correct?
that's right.
And where
Yeah.
you guys will both be in Erie or in Boulder?
I'll be in Boulder until probably like a little before noon, and then I can be in Erie or I can be in Boulder, or I can go wherever.
Let's see what the weather looks like. Is it going to be cloudy? No, it's going to be sunny. Okay. Let me think. Do you know of any really pretty spots near you in Erie? Because we could make Erie home base, and then that gives us time to at least figure out kind of where we want to go from there.
You mean like, are you talking like outdoor?
Yeah.
Spots?
Yeah, like something big and vast and open, or rocky terrain. Just really anything that would be visually stunning. I mean, because we can shoot wherever, right? Like I can be specific, and we can make this about like selective focus and close-ups, which we'll get anyway. But it'd be nice to be able to get like some fun wide shots in a cool environment.
Yeah. Well, there's not a lot of expansive spaces in Erie.
There's that spot over by the airport that's kind of sweet. You know what I'm talking about? That little that little mini airport over on the drive into Lafayette.
The Erie Airport?
Yeah, is it that little tiny one?
I don't know. I've never been in there.
There's like some big open land up on a hilltop on the way over there that I've filmed some stuff before with a great view of the mountains. Here, let me look it up.
I just hiked the Royal Arch Trail this morning. That would be awesome, but it's be sweaty by the time we get up in there. Kind of by Chautauqua. There's a lot going on there.
I mean, Chautauqua is always a good fallback because we never ended up shooting at Chautauqua. Maybe we just do that. We just keep it real simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, sweet. And so then
my buddy's house is right near there if we needed something that wasn't like public as well.
Okay.
I could probably get access to that.
Yeah, you want to see if he's willing to house us for a little bit? At least we can stop there as just sort of like a checkpoint. Let's meet at Chautauqua at like 12:30.
Okay.
And then kind of just go from there. Bring like your usual leather jackets, cowboy hat, guitar, harmonica.
My nicest sweats.
Yeah, make sure you got a shirt that you can pop open.
I will. For sure. You know me, dude.
Yeah, dude.
You're finally getting it.
What?
You know my style now.
Yeah, I do. It was not hard to figure out.
Yeah, sweet.
All right, cool. Let's plan for that. And then I'll have better ideas later tonight. I mean, my brain's fried, so like if you hadn't noticed, my creativity is not at its finest.
No, you're all good, man. You've been working hard. I felt kind of the same way on Sunday, but talking to people, they said it sounded great. So
it did, dude. I'm so grateful. That was so fun.
Right on. Yeah, I'm more than happy to do it. It sounded like it probably sounded better for the audience than it did for us in that corner. So
yeah, I thought it sounded great.
That.
Dude,
sweet.
We've raised 18 grand. Well, actually, just 10 grand just came in. So 28 grand in the last week.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's put a 0 on that.
Yeah.
Sucker across the finish line. But you got a couple $100,000 you want to invest in the film? He's gonna have to talk to his accountant.
It's the last day. Just gotta do it today.
Okay. Well, they got us working in shifts, man.
All right, dude. I will see you tomorrow then. And I'll send you more details. Will you let Erica know the plan?
I will.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Talk to you soon, brother.
See you.
Okay. Love you so much. What is going on? There's some fluff in here. All right, this is great. Okay. Let's get the iPad out. Stop. Okay. ChatGPT. Here, we're going to do this. Shoot. On this. Copy. And let's do this. Paste. Okay. Let's see. Oh, sweet. We do have people in. Hey, Vedant, how's it going? Can you hear me all right? All right, test 1, 2. Just making sure. Excellent. Excellent. Thanks for being here, man. I'm excited to give you updates. This is the fun part of the process. Oh, okay. We're going to do this then. Swap this over. Google. Mhm. Agree. Excellent. And then let's go ahead and get this up here to perfect. Perfect. Yeah, Vedant, if you want to just start dropping all of your questions in the chat, that's easier for me because I'm just tallying up a big list of stuff that I'm going to go over. All right, we're going to jump in here in just a couple of minutes. And people will kind of filter in as we start going. I have a fun list of good questions that I got from a bunch of different people. It's great stuff. It like ranges everywhere from kind of like some of my craft and kind of some of how I approach directing as just a whole to some of the lessons that I've learned on the journey to like working with actors. Like there's a really fun range of stuff in here. So I'm very excited about this kind of Q&A. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just start by introducing myself. Most of you guys know me. My name is Micah Groenevelt. I am the co-writer, co-producer, and director of Starfish. I have been a filmmaker for over 15 years now at this point. It was a passion that I found in high school with a good friend. We were really into some YouTube sketches, and then I got the opportunity to attend a free year of film school. And it was during that year that I found my people, I found my craft, and I found the thing that I fell in love with. On top of that, I was lucky enough to be pretty kind of naturally gifted at film. So that made it a lot easier to sort of realize that this is something that I really do want to do. And we'll probably get into more later on the thing that kind of keeps you going, the momentum, the stamina, the crazy challenge that it is to be a filmmaker just as a whole. But so I made a couple different big short films in school. I won a bunch of awards for kind of my first big short film in school. And that was kind of when I started defining my sense of style and voice. And then I did a big thesis project that was not very good, but it was very ambitious. And so I had kind of like both templates of something that had really worked and was successful and got nominated for an Emmy, as well as one that was not that good, but was really ambitious and taught me a ton. And then I graduated, I think this was 2017. And then I jumped right into production company. And from there, I struggled for the first kind of 3-4 years with the production company because I didn't really understand business. I just was a filmmaker who wanted to make cool content. And it wasn't really till COVID that I really kind of put my head down and took the business seriously. I started realizing, hey, I don't want to be making a bunch of interview videos for realtors anymore. I want to be doing some creative work. I started working with a brewery who I still do work for, Satire Brewing Company, and they let me essentially go creatively wild. And that gave me a test run on how to practice some of the genres. I call it kind of my film school 2.0. It taught me the business side behind kind of making sure how video and content works in general. I realized I do have a mind for business, which I was really grateful for. And then I got to test out a bunch of different genres and styles that I had been wanting to for a really long time. Making a feature film eats up years and years of your life. And you really have to make sure that it's something that you love doing and that you're going to devote the rest of your life to. And so I knew for a fact that I didn't want to be spending 4 years making a horror movie. And so I got to sort of exercise certain muscles like making a horror or comedy or action. Like these are genres that I love as a filmmaker, but they're never ones that I would want to make an entire feature out of. More so kind of just incorporate those elements into some of the features that I love. I'm a big fantasy nut and a fantasy nerd. So like Lord of the Rings is the reason why I make movies. And I've always wanted to see really great fantasy come to the screen. And so that ends up kind of being the big motivating factor. It was about the end of 2021 when I had a friend invite me to work as a grip on his feature film here in Colorado. A grip is just someone who moves around stands and lights. And it had been a while since I'd been on set. I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. It's been a while. Like, let's give it a shot. And I got reminded of all the things that I don't love about a movie set. A lot of money was wasted and a lot of time. I realized if I was directing that movie, I would have just fired me because they should not have been spending money on an extra grip when the art department needed those resources so badly. And that's just kind of the nature of how this industry works a lot of the time. And I was like, I want to fix this. If these guys can raise $250,000 in order to make a movie, it's time for me to finally just sit down and make my movie. And one of the days on set, my job was to sit and watch a generator for 8 or 9 hours. And I paced and I used that as kind of writing day number 1. It was during this time that I found the key that unlocked this story, because Starfish was something that I had thought of way back in film school, the whole idea of a man cloning his wife to try and bring her back, but it had never really gone anywhere. I had never really written much with it. I had a rough outline, but the story wasn't enough to make it exciting. I had a writing teacher in school talk about what's called the 1-2 punch, which is every great idea should hit you once with its concept and then knock you out with the other. So a good example is Jurassic Park is one that I like to use, which is on its face, theme park with dinosaurs, right? There's a big knockout punch there. But really that movie is about how do you evolve as a person and as a parent, right? Because that's really that entire journey. And so that's the second kind of knockout. So you get your emotional and your concept. My philosophy around filmmaking has always been what I call the head, heart, groin, which is every single good story should stimulate your mind and you should be able to rationally think about it and it be philosophically satisfying. It should move your heart. It should be an emotional piece that moves you. And then there should be something primal about it, right? Whether that's a good action scene or something really intense with violence or a really good romance, something that gets your entire system locked in and engaged. And I think those are the best movies. Something like Jurassic Park does every single one of those check marks. And those are the kind of films and type of cinema that I want to contribute to. And so then I spent the next year writing the first draft of Starfish. And it was really bad. First drafts are always really bad. And then Jeff had been talking about wanting to write together for some time. And I realized, I'm like, I can't do this alone. This is not good enough. Let's take a crack at it. And so we would meet every single Sunday and we would talk for about 3-4 hours and then we'd write for about 2. And we did that for 3 years, just every single Sunday. And we really loved that process, had a ton of fun, and we're really proud of the script that we had brought together. And then at a certain point, we're like, it's time to test read this. Let's bring together some people. Let's see if we have a movie on our hands. And that's when we began. It was like, okay, people like this. They're engaged with this. This is the story worth telling. We knew we needed to cut about 30 pages out at that time because at that point, our draft was 167 pages. A good rule of thumb is a screenplay is roughly 1 minute per page of per script page. So you want to aim for between the 90 to 120 page mark. Unless you have a really good reason for going longer than that. And so we got it cut down where we sit at 125, which is about right. I would like this movie to run at about 2 hours and 10 minutes runtime when it all is said and done. And then we were like, all right, time for us to embark upon financing. This is a movie that we can actually shoot. It has a really reasonable budget. And now let's figure out what does it look like to finance a feature film. And I've learned so much since we set out on that journey. The real start of the grind began in August of last year, and it has literally just been pretty much 12-hour days every day since then. I found a little bit more of a routine and a rhythm because I definitely burned myself to the ground during a period of that. I can talk about some of that if you guys are curious, but one of the big realizations is this is the marathon. This is a career about stamina. How can you stay in the race, stay in pass the baton when you need to and keep running the distance. And I'm grateful that film feels like it kind of chose me. Like I feel a little bit of almost a victim to filmmaking, if I'm honest. And I'm glad that I love it because I'm stuck in it. All right. With that said, I'm going to kind of just go and start jumping through these questions. If anything that pops up for you guys, just drop a question in the comments and I'll get to it. I have a cool variety of stuff I was saying, from some of my crafts and how I approach thinking about directing to some of the lessons that we've learned to some of the business side of how do you get a film financed? What does packaging look like? At this point, we feel really confident. We have a very broad base on all of this. Okay, so the first question that kind of came in, it had a little bit of setup, but the summary of this is, what is your preferred approach to achieving authenticity in an actor's performance? I love this question. Honestly, working with actors is one of my favorite parts of this entire process. I describe actors, the director for me is like this middleman between the clouds and the earth. An actor, a really good actor, is such a sensitive person whose imagination is so wild and free almost. And of course, all actors are different. That my job is to kind of just protect them and to create little safe containers for them to be able to exude into. The way I describe it is essentially my job as the director is creating containers that I fill with talent. So I just pick someone and say, you're the right person for this. I'm not very knit and grit with my direction. I can be if an actor needs it, but for the most part, I pick someone who I just trust their instinct. That's why casting is the most important part of a performance. Because once you have the right person, I just set them up in a right scenario. I prompt them and I just let them run wild. And that's the biggest joy. The way to kind of do that for me a lot of the time is I take into account something Tarantino said in one interview, which is you never deny the feelings that you have of the day. So like some days are just slogs. Like today was really cloudy out. I was just not feeling very good today. And you have to let those things inform the day. It's almost a trusting process of, all right, today we're all going to feel a little bit like shit. And that is what we need to bring into the scene and this performance today. Another way that I think about that is Nolan always talks about, we shoot the weather is how he describes it. He's not planning his days around what the weather's doing, when and where. The weather that the film gods gave you that day is the weather that you're meant to shoot in. We got really blessed with that when we shot the proof of concept trailer recently because it was set to snow. And I did not build any of my shot lists thinking with snow in mind because it's been sunny and cloudless for months now. And of course, Colorado, we always get some random snow in the middle of April. And it ended up making it so that it looked like we shot in 4 different weather biomes in one day. Because the morning it was really sunny. By the time we were doing our setups in the afternoon, it was pelting us with snow. By the time we got to our exterior locations, it was coming down and the fog was coming up. And then by the time we got to our last location, the sun had started popping out again and we got a sunset. It was incredible. And those are those moments that you're like, it's just too good. Like people talk about making movies it's a miracle that it ever ends up happening. And it's days like that you're like, yeah, it is a miracle. Like you could never plan for that. Instead, you just sort of learn to adapt and roll with the punches and how do you shift and maneuver things as you need. And so I think about directing actors in very much that same way. All right, the next one we have here is, what is your biggest challenge you faced to get started? And I assume this person means to get started like in production, like pulling the trigger, saying that this is a real project. Because writing is pretty easy. You can do that independently. Like the writing process is not easy, but deciding to start writing a script, no one can tell you no. You're not reliant on anybody else. It's one of the only aspects of this industry that is not collaborative unless you're co-writing with somebody. I think this is probably more of, when did you know it's time to pull the trigger? For me, there's this moment I remember where I was still, I think, kind of dilly-dallying. I hadn't really jumped off the deep end yet. And Jeff called me up and he kind of reamed me a little bit. It was much needed. And it was sort of this conversation of, Micah, you say you want to be a director. You say you want to do all these things, but I'm not seeing any of that behavior from you. Like you're kind of doing the bare minimum and kind of waiting for something to take off before you make this leap. And he was like, honestly, I just recommend a book for you, which is this book called Turning Pro by Stephen Pressfield. His most famous book is War of Art, which is also another great book. But in that book, he talks about there's this moment when someone decides to turn pro, and you'll remember that moment for the rest of your life because it's the moment your life kind of changes. And it was kind of after that conversation with Jeff and that book that it was like, okay, it's time for us to get an office somewhere allocated so that on an energetic level, that's where the creation actually happens rather than from our homes or from our bedrooms. Because I don't need to be doing this in an office. Instead, it's a sacred space that you create to show up every single day in order to build towards something. And so the biggest challenge was essentially just realizing that I was not the man that I needed to be. And I knew it was going to be a really painful growing process of an experience that I had never done before, thrust into a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of working hard in a way that my body was just not used to. But as humans, we adapt, and we adapt incredibly as a species. And honestly, it was me realizing how much happier I was. My brain is always firing. And I realized a lot of my life I've lived just understimulated. And so I think I was always looking for extra little stories or little things to kind of pull intrigue. And it was the first time in my life to where my brain felt maxed out. And it was like a relief almost of, oh, here we go. Now I'm in the groove. This is what I'm meant to do. And my brain feels suited for this. So it was kind of just getting over a lot of humility, like a lot of pride. I got humbled really badly at the beginning of this process and throughout, if I'm totally honest, because I came in very much feeling like some kid who just wants to make his feature film. And now at this point, it's taking some of the ownership of the knowledge that we do know of like, oh, I am an expert in film. And from the business side to directing to distribution, like there's always things to learn, but I can finally stand on my own 2 feet and feel confident that I know what I'm talking about. But you have to eat shit a lot of times before you actually can finally get there. All right. Next question. It seems there may be some highly emotional scenes as well as tech focused. From a cinematography perspective, is there a particular style, approach, or genre that is being embraced in setting the tone or tones within the shooting or editing? I also love this question. This is one of my favorite. I got into film because it's a visual medium, and it's as much an auditory medium as it is visual, but the picture, I thought I wanted to be a cinematographer when I first started, because at school, there were a couple of projects I worked on where the cinematographer was picking all the shots. And I was like, that's the whole point. Like, that's what I want to do. So yes, there are direct correlations that I'm pulling inspiration from for tone and for some visual style. I would break it into a few categories. So there's the look of the movie, which would be sort of like what kind of lenses and what sort of color grade and what is the mood tone that you're kind of going for. And that delineates based on each chapter, right? So when we're in the first chapter, the camera is mostly locked off. The world is still kind of put together. Marie hasn't passed away yet. Their love is still kind of stable and together. And also their science is kind of on the cutting edge, which means I want really crisp camera movements, and the camera's almost always locked off. And then after she dies and we get into Act 2 and we switch to the perspective of M, the clone, we become the point of view of a child, in which case the camera becomes much more selective with focus and with close-ups and a lot more handheld and organic movements. And some of this is practical, right? Because I'm shooting with kids, I need to know that we can just grab moments whenever there's a moment that's going to be really worthwhile and authentic. And so it gives us that freedom and flexibility, but it also works visually in terms of the editing, because now we're entering into a different kind of point of view. We're a lot lower, looking up at people rather than kind of eye level, as we get to sort of understand who she is as a person through her eyes, and the camera kind of gets to guide and show that. I love perspective in film. It's kind of one of the harder things to identify, but whose perspective are we? When is information revealed? Do we know more than the characters, or do we know the same amount as some characters but not others? Or are we the omniscient kind of God over which we reign over these given characters? So that's a tone thing. So we already kind of know what lenses we want to shoot, what kind of creates the most kind of buttery skin for the type of look that we want. I have a few vintage lenses that I want to shoot a few different select scenes on that I know for a fact I want to use. And then outside of that, there are things like production design. So the way I'm describing the actual look and feel of the movie through what's in the frame rather than what the frame is capturing. I mean, rather than the lensing, I guess, is I would want it to be 1 degree away from reality. I'm really into fashion. I'm really into color theory, and I am really into composition. And so how do those things complement each other? It should feel like real life, but just 1 twist away. So a good example would be a movie like Her, right? Which feels very grounded, very realistic, but then it's this future that just feels 1 degree away from the future that we have now. And I love things like that with the fashion and with when are you pulling in a color pop that wouldn't necessarily be there in real life, but cinematically it is just so much eye candy that you can't look away. While the emotion of the film is totally realistic and grounded. And then I can juxtapose those two things of like fantasy and reality, which like invites you into the reality of these really intense emotions while also getting to play with the beauty. It's so fun. I'm very passionate about it. And then, all right, next one we have here. How did you know this story felt like the right one to turn into film? Honestly, it's the screenplay became clear in my head once I had that key that unlocked it. And then really what kind of solidified it was I knew it was a really smart first feature. It's really shootable. It's about humans. It's high concept enough that it has the intrigue and the draw, right? There's the sci-fi, that I get to lean into, but it's also really just people in rooms living life at a kind of bare level, which means I can shoot on all real locations. Only one set that I have to build. We get to sort of learn and patch together what doesn't work as we need to because of the way that it's structured in 3 different chapters. It gave us a little bit of room for error because I know as a director, there's going to be blind spots that I have. And this is kind of my first foray into not messing around. And that's really important to me. All right. I watched the proofs of concept. It gave me chills. Will the movie have the same intensity? For those of you that don't know, proof of concept is live now. We shot an actual trailer for the film. Yes, it will certainly have the same intensity. It will have a lot more than just that intensity in other aspects. For the proof of concept trailer, we leaned into the sci-fi, the thriller aspects, the intrigue, and because really what we're using with that trailer is to build out the rest of the package for Starfish in order to gap finance. This funding is our seed round. This is the community round. You guys get to own your piece of the movie. And then we're going to take that plus the proof of concept trailer, plus our actor attachments, plus some pre-sales that we end up getting in order to gap finance the rest of the entire picture. Details about investments. Are you willing to share the script at certain investment level? We're pretty open with the script as long as you're we don't have a lot of time at this point to receive a ton of notes, and we kind of already know what little tweaks and changes that we want to make. But if you're curious and you would like to actually read the script, feel free to shoot me an email. And if you have a good reason why, then I would be happy to share that with you. All right, next here is, what's a piece of motivation you can give to filmmakers for when it feels impossible to keep going in development? This is the same age-old advice I constantly give to really anyone who shares any interest in film. I've shied more and more away from encouraging people to be a filmmaker, mainly because I think it takes, especially as a director, it takes very much the right combo of right and left brain, especially as the industry shifts to where you have to be business-minded and you have to be a creative and you have to bounce back and forth between them so you feel like a crazy person a lot of the time. And so if you're not super mentally stable, which most artists aren't totally, completely have the right autonomy over themselves, it's a risky business to be in. And it's very thankless. It's a lot of rejection. But really the one word I can summarize in all of it is just stamina. You just got to keep going. Ridley Scott has an interview with the BBC or BAFTA, and he's like, yeah, I mean, that's really all it is. You're the one who's pulling the cart. People come, they go. You have to be the one driving every single step of the way. And it will never be that someone takes that from you. You are the driving force, and it will be years and years and years of thankless work. The beauty of film is that the appreciation when it does come, if you make a good film, is like a waterfall that just blasts over you, and you get like pretty much all of your validation and appreciation in like 2 days, which can be terrifying. But then it's immediately it's right back to it, and it's not a very sexy job in any way. People think that it is, but really no. Acting is a little bit different because if you're like a good actor getting a lot of work, then you show up for 24 days, you get to do your entire thing. You get a lot of the kind of accolades in the press. A lot of people are validating what you're doing. It's there on the forefront. As a director, you're a lot of the time behind the scenes. If you really want a good context for that, just watch Peter Jackson in the making of Lord of the Rings, because, I mean, incredible films, right? He goes down as one of probably the best directors in history and easily the best trilogy and probably in cinema history. And he's miserable the entire time, and no one appreciates what he's doing until the movie's done, and then he gets to have a few days of enjoyment. If you had to cut everything down, what is one non-negotiable core of the story? At this point, the whole, I would say the premise is one, right? It's a concept that is just exciting and intriguing and makes people lean in. But core of the story would be the authentic, it would be the two relationships. It's Jonah's relationship to Marie. What does a really unique and healthy marriage look like on screen? And that includes partnership and passion and diligence and progress. And then Jonah's relationship with M. And what does it look like to be a good father and self-sacrifice for someone more important than you, and to have to set aside what you lost and the desire to have it back in order to do what's best and right for someone else. That's the emotional core of this entire story. And without that, I don't care about this movie anymore. On that note, though, if you're working with partners that are trying to change the project into something you don't want it to be, just step away from those partners. Like, you don't want to get roped into a giant project that is painful. Let's see. Although planned outtakes, cutaways, and B-roll can help in cutting the film to retain the story's integrity and continuity, what's your philosophy on knowing when to move on? I realize some directors do not rehearse scenes and demand very few takes for a variety of reasons. Cost, time, wear out factor all hinder budget and actor performance. When do you feel like you have it in the can? This just comes down to having shot and not that I know when I have it. So the way that I'll do it is you can usually tell, right? You'll get a gut intuition of that's it. We have it. I know it's going to cut. I also build my shot list based on how I'm going to edit. So I don't shoot coverage the way that a typical TV show or something does, where you do 5 different setups, all of the same scene, and you have them run it again and again and again, and then you find how you want to cut the scene in the edit. I know exactly what moments I want what shots for what's different emotional impact, which means the edit's easy, right? Or it's not easy, but the first cut is simple to figure out because I already know where everything's going to go. I can show you guys at some point the boarded version of the proof of concept versus the final, because they're probably 80% connected. Like, I literally knew exactly where I was going to just drop things into the timeline, and then it's just finessing. But as far as knowing when to move on, once I have the take that I'm really happy with, then if we have time, I always give one to play with, because an actor feels the stress to get it right. And a huge part of performance is letting go. And so once you know you have something that will work, right? It's like solid 90% of the way there. You know it's going to cut together well. Then you say, let's do one more and let's just play with this one. And that's almost always the take that you end up using because the actor feels total relief of stress. Their brain goes in a totally different direction and they reapproach the scene in a really dynamic way that ends up usually giving you chills. And you're like, that's the one. And then you're really excited. And then if you have more time on top of that, you're like, ooh, let's do another one like that, but let's change this. That's when the play comes into a lot of just the play is on set. And then I've never really had the problem. Like, I know some directors struggle from sort of like paralysis by analysis. I don't really have that. We got to move and we have a whole day of stuff to shoot. So I'll stay on something until we get it right, but I don't really run into I don't really know if we've got it or we don't. It's pretty obvious. We don't or we do. And then you kind of move on from there. Okay, let's get to a few in the chat, and then I have a few others that I have here for us. All right, so this first one was here is just basics, release dates and where. So that's some of what we're updating with the project as a whole, which is technically we should be shooting right now. That's when we were slated. But this industry, it humbles you and it says, nope, it's not time. There were X, Y, and Z things that you needed to learn that you didn't do properly, that you needed to stop being so stubborn on and adapt. And that is the process that we're in right now, which is the aim is for late fall. But I am not restricting myself to that anymore. We know this is a marathon and not a sprint. I want the best movie that Starfish wants to become rather than that I'm going to try and shove into a box. So if we get the right actor attachments over these next couple months, if we find that it makes a ton of sense to shoot here in Colorado, which is the aim and the plan, but there's some questions around that, then we shoot in September. And we just go off to the races. We go into early pre-production. We have most of the stuff planned that we need. But if it ends up being that we shoot next spring, about this time next year, that is also okay with me. I've been sinking so much of my life into this, and I love this story so much that I want to give it what it deserves. But as far as release goes, I kind of want to stick to the schedule that we have in place generally, which is I want to release summer or fall of 27. As long as I have the 25 days that I need to shoot and then at least 3 months or more of editing, then that should be enough time to where I feel content with the final film. And then we can release it to the public. A lot of filmmaking is momentum, as you guys know. So it depends on what press is like at the time, what sort of festival are we building toward, if we are going to build towards a festival, or are we just building toward our theatrical release. I'm hoping that they kind of pair together so we can start building press, hit a festival, let that momentum of that festival ride us into a month or two later to be released in theaters that we can then go nationwide and do our overall theatrical deal. And so that's kind of the game plan for release and date as it stands. Let's see. Can you share details of your financing plan after the WeFunder campaign concludes? Yes. So we initially thought we were raising the $561,000, and there were a couple problems with that number for a few reasons. One of which was it's too big of a budget to be thought of as a donation. Almost, right? To raise that amount of money through donations is very, very difficult, but it's also too small to be considered a serious picture or an investment. And some of the reason why I learned is just because of how actor attachments work. Most movies that fall in the range of $1 to $3 million, less than half of that usually is going to the actual production of the picture. The money over the top is what sort of executive producers are you pulling on for names of kind of supervision as well as cast. And there's a balancing act that I want to find with Starfish, because I heard a story of they were like bragging that they had spent $500,000 on Gary Oldman to be in their movie. And then I watched the movie and he's like in like 2 scenes for like 3 minutes. And he doesn't act along any side anyone else. You could tell that they like inserted it into the movie that could be this kind of carry through thing, but it didn't. It felt a little forced, and it felt like we got Gary Oldman and it cost this much. I'm of the mindset that $500,000 can pay for an entire feature film. So why would you not just go make your own movie separate from that? They definitely succeeded from that. They were able to sell to Universal. They did make their money back. It was worth it for them. That being said, that feels a little icky to me. But also, they are stars for a reason. They are the front-facing thing that you see on a movie. And in the past, they were the pass or fail of whether or not a film made its money back. That doesn't really exist anymore. So the reason names are more important now than ever is because of the fundraising, the financing side. A lot of investment is about the excitement of meeting the actors, being on set, and knowing that the project is taken care of and that people are being responsible. It does help with the box office, but it's more of a baseline net than it is a guarantee. And so that's why we focus so much more on what is a really interesting marketing plan, how are we doing distribution, because those are becoming the new templates of what actually makes money at the box office. So that being said, I want a couple different names attached to this movie for not only the press and our marketing, but for some of the film festival stuff that we're doing. And then also it's one of those things that the film wants to be bigger. And that I am resigning to letting the film tell me what it wants rather than me trying to force the film into a box. And so after this round closes, we're treating this WeFunder round as seed funds, similar to how you would with a startup. A big thing that studios really love is how much capital have you already raised? And we've raised a hell of a lot of money in a way that looks really good for our package. So then we put together the rest of the package, which comes with, and I mentioned it briefly, but our new proof of concept trailer, which is why we shot that. Pre-sales internationally, I can take the actor attachments and the proof of concept trailer and sell distribution rights to certain territories overseas before the movie's actually made. This is kind of like the baseline of how independent film is actually financed and has been for a very, very long time. And they pay you up front that you can use that money towards your movie. And then once the movie's actually done, if you have a big hit, then they get to just benefit from the entire upside of that, which I would be totally okay with. And I just care about as many people get to watch the movie as possible. And so that helps close that gap financing, right? And then you sort of say, all right, what state can we shoot in that gives us the best tax incentive? So if we were aiming for something around 30%, and so then you say, all right, let's say, for example, we're $1 million, which we're readjusting our budget. We had to figure out the exact details, but it will be about $1 to $1.5 million is going to be where we sit. Let's say 1, for example. 30% of that is covered by incentives. Let's say we do another $500,000 in pre-sales. Then we have 800,000 of our 2 million covered. We now have $150,000 raised through WeFunder and you guys. And now we have just 50 grand to cover. And now the risk exposure is tiny, right? And so then now you guys get to all benefit from the upside, and we have $1 million feature film that we can throw $300,000 towards getting a name attached, as well as still operate off of our shooting budget of what I know I can make it for. So that's kind of where we are moving from now. So how I'm going to do that is there are a few different kind of investors that I can re-talk to, right, who are interested in the movie, but not in the place that it was at. It wasn't ready, right? It was us learning and focusing on the diligence of the business side of the production rather than some of the exciting appeal. The way I describe it is if I cold send an email to someone, can they be excited in the first 30 seconds of that email? Before we started packaging it this way, no, you kind of had to spend 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then people were in, right? They're like, oh, these guys have their T's crossed and I's dotted. This is a very exciting project. They've thought about this very thoroughly. And so that's, honestly, I'm really glad to have built the foundation on that. But then, and now it's just time to lean into some of the sex appeal of the film industry, which is, all right, we've got these different actors attached. We've got this amount raised. Here's a proof of concept trailer. If you've got 30 seconds, just check it out. I have further materials I can follow up with. And then these either kind of organizations or studios, right? So I'm going to separate them because there's about 4 individuals that I know I can go to directly who I think would want to fill in essentially the rest of the entire project if they're interested. They've shown interest so far, just not enough to pull the trigger on anything. And then also on the other side is just studios that do very similar and parallel movies, right? So there's distributors and production houses that are like, we specialize in sci-fi and we specialize in these kind of like hard-hitting dramas. And we would love that combo. And I can approach them and say, I've got everything ready. I've got all the materials. A lot of them will have a network pool already of investors that they will pull into projects on ones that they're excited about. And a lot of the time it's a part of a slate. So essentially, production company will say, we're making 10 feature films this year, and we're finding which of those 10, like who we want to slot into those 10 different spots. And then the investment pool comes in and finances all 10. And then they benefit from the upside of all of those films. So you kind of only need one to really pop off. So say Starfish ends up making $35 million at the box office and all those other movies are flops. That ends up still being a net positive for all the investors involved. And so I'll talk to those different studios. There's always a few different things that they want or catches that come with it. But now that we know enough about the industry, we know now how not to get screwed, essentially, because there's a lot of people who will try and honestly take away small little things that are really precious to me, like my team, right? Like people will be like, well, you got to shoot in X, Y, and Z states, and you're going to have to work with this team. That's just what's done for a professional movie. And I know from David Fincher where he's like, yeah, I mean, Alien 3 sucks because I didn't work with my guys and I got convinced by other people to work with professionals rather than the people that I knew and liked and trusted. And the reason I've been able to produce such high results with such limited resources is just because I trust my team and I love them and I've known them for years and we know how to move fast. We have a shorthand. There's an inherent trust built. There's extended roles outside of that I love enveloping people into the fold. So any of the kind of below the line or I don't have an assistant director yet. So that's someone that I'm really excited to be able to kind of envelop into our fold. And that can end up just helping support us. All right. Is there any more questions? Any more questions in the chat? Otherwise, I'll go through a few here. We'll give it about 10 more minutes and then I'll summarize with kind of where things are going, kind of just a really, honestly, just the gratitude that I feel for this project. Like there's been so many ups and downs and it's refined my character in ways that I really can. That will never, they'll stay with me forever. My relationships, my work, my overall happiness and my trajectory for the future has never been better. And I think it's due, like I owe Starfish and the community around me for holding me accountable to that. Okay, let's see. Perfect take. This is a fun one. Do you create more from instinct or structure? Pre-production to me is the process of plan, so that you can forget it. The way intuition works to me is you absorb new knowledge and it's foreign to your body, but the more that you feel and know it to be true and understand it, then it becomes intuition. And so when people say that they have a really good gut, people will talk about this in editors all the time, is they have a really good gut for the cut. And my theory on that is they've just seen so many movies, they have built in an intuition of when an edit works. And so that's how I like to work, is I just absorb a lot, learn as much as I possibly can, try and keep my ego out of the way of everything. And then when the moment arises, just make the decision and trust that your heart and your gut knows it's the right decision. Financially. Okay, this is a fun one on the business side. What makes Starfish a smart investment creatively and financially? Creatively, very much so that we got lucky with the fact that it is a sci-fi. I didn't realize how it's number one is horror, of course. Horror movies almost always make money. And then kind of the next like three that are pretty close is like action, and then comedies and sci-fi. Fantasy is kind of there, but the expense to make fantasy is much, much higher than something like sci-fi. And so we get to stay in the really small budget territory and still yield really high results. And I just keep being reminded of like so many people come on board because they're like, I just love sci-fi. Like, I don't care what it is. It's sci-fi. I'm all in. And then also I really love that just because technology is an in-baked part of our culture and the way our bodies work these days. And so speculating on the future, they say life imitates art. And I'm an eternal optimist, and every single piece of sci-fi that I see is cynical and it's about the end of the world and dystopia. And I'm like, I don't want to live in that world. And I see really cool opportunity from some technology. How can we use this to provide hope and optimism for the future? And so that was a very exciting thing. And then financially, this is an investment, so there's no guarantees, and I can't ever say that. But for me, it's just the obligation I have to the people who believe in me. Is not only are we thorough with the business plan and our projections are super conservative, and we took into account every possible way that it could go wrong, and then still built the most robust path to finding an ROI, because we want to make people money. If you're willing to take a risk on a creative or entertainment endeavor, I feel like you should reap the giant rewards of that investment. It's why we did crowdfunding through WeFunder, because it's crowd equity, right? A lot of people are like, well, you're raising through the crowd, you might as well just do it through something like Seed and Spark or Kickstarter. And I'm like, yeah, but those are donations. Like, we'll take donations. They're great for operating expenses and for the people who just believe in the film. But I personally would want to invest in a creator that I believe, so that there is an upside. They talk about just like, who was it? It was some sort of story with Star Wars, but some guy was like, I'll just give you the money and I don't need anything back. Oh, it was like two different people in Star Wars. One guy was like, don't pay me back. Just give me like 1% of sort of some of the profits. And the other guy was like, I just want to be paid back as soon as possible with 120% recoupment. And we can both imagine where those people are now, right? Star Wars. And so that to me would be, that's the main kind of motivating factor for me. How are you thinking about distribution? This is a really cool one. What are investors really supporting beyond just the film? This has become more of an endeavor in career. What we realized we're doing with all the work that we've done over these last 9 months is not only raising money for Starfish, but building an infrastructure and relationships so that we never have to work this hard again to raise money for a given picture. We just recently started a film fund. Like, we have so many resources and connections to where there's an opportunity by this time next year for us to be financing other people's projects at the same time. And that is really exciting. It's building a long-term career of how we're reshaping independent filmmaking as an investable asset, not just as, the mere fact that most of the places that I go to and I'm asking for support for investment, they'll say, oh yeah, I'll donate to your movie. Like, it's such a shorthand. They think of it as just charity work. And I'm like, no. I want independent film to be an investable asset, an alternative investment for sure. But also, let's de-risk the hell out of it. Let's make it into a really viable market strategy so that this can be another diversification of your portfolio. And I think that's really exciting. Let's see. Alan has a question here. Business plan, you explained a theatrical rollout in waves, starting with 20 theaters, net funds from each wave finance to the next wave. Is that still part of the plan? Yes, indeed it is. The only way that we're moving away from our plan with Harmon and Atlas is if we got such a killer distribution deal through someone like Neon or A24 that it was impossible to refuse. But we believe that that's going to be the future of film. And we've got evidence now of people doing that successfully and making that work. So I don't know if you guys have followed the movie Iron Lung. Markiplier is a YouTuber. It's fun. I used him in my presentation. I'm like, do any of you guys know who this is? And I'm like, and they all shook their head. I'm like, well, your kids do. He has something like, it's like something ridiculous, like 32 million subscribers on YouTube or something like that. He threw $3 million of his own money, started his own film, based it off of a really niche indie video game that he bought the licensing for, made his own movie, and then was like, I'm just going to do my own self-distribution, self-release. And he started out real small. He started out with like 20 theaters. And then he just spoke to his audience and said, call up a theater near you and say that you want my movie there. And the theaters thought it was just some sort of like ploy or prank or kind of just an annoyance until so many people were calling that they're like, all right, fine, we'll put your movie in the theater. A movie theater only cares about, are people going to come to the cinemas? So however you can get an audience there, most of them make their money off of a box office concessions and then a small percentage of the ticket split. And so essentially what he did was just work off of his own audience. He didn't spend a single dollar on marketing, and he self-distributed his entire movie. I forget how many theaters, but I know it was over 2,500 theaters that he was across the US. And he pulled in more money than Sam Raimi's movie did at the exact same time. He made I think it was $85 million off of that movie. That is all right into his pocket, which I think is just so incredible and is setting a template for what different possibilities. Of course, he has the audience built in. We do not, but there are ways of leveraging other audiences that is, I can't say anything yet, but I'm excited to announce that. Regardless, we are going to do the wave, and we do have the data we're going to have all of our data metrics for every single given scene. So whatever we do for P&A advertising is built into our theatrical distribution. Markiplier has billions of views on his videos, and his series on YouTube, series on Amazon, and now the theaters. Yeah. Yes, it is a complicated one. It's why it's a fun bullet point to talk about, but everyone's talking about it because it is more complicated than people just say on its face. The point is that it's a template that has been shown to work, and there are other examples kind of like it that are a little bit more that are more niche. A good one that's kind of a fun one is what's it called? It's like Thousands of Beavers is what I think it's called. They did their own little thing to where it gained such a cult following in their community that they just went on these little theater runs from region to region to region. It was only a $100,000 film, but they had such a fun cult following that they made it into like an event. And so they had these loyal fans who would come and literally travel the country with them as a viewership because the experience was more than just the movie. So there are like really creative ways to think about film rather than how it used to be, which is finish the movie, put it in theaters, people show up. No. It's got to be involved in your community and your audience and who is it tying to and what are different organizations that are helping spread the word. Like, it becomes a bigger thing. One of the things that we're excited to do is how can we have like some sort of mission focus behind it, right? What sort of nonprofits can we partner and say certain percentage of the proceeds are going to go to doing X, Y, and Z? Because those are things that we believe in. Those are relevant themes in the film. And that is an entire audience base that we can sort of expand into. It's a really fun time to be in this industry right now because it's changing, which means everyone's uncertain, but that means every single window has opportunity. And so you get to sort of say, all right, who's trying what? And why do we think that's going to work? And why is what we're doing a little bit different? And you get to kind of test and compare and adapt and move forward. That's why stamina is just the one thing in film industry, staying open and staying curious. Why this film and why not your life? Okay, here's just like a good personal one. How has this project changed you so far? I brushed on it briefly, but like I would describe it fundamentally as like a man-child into a professional. I'm a big personality, as most of you who've met me know, and I realized how much I was compensating with insecurity. Like I was uncomfortable with silence. And so I would fill in gaps, and I still do that sometimes. But now I'm realizing the time that I have is really precious, and I want to spend it with the people that I like and am growing with. And I want to be doing the things that will move the needle. And so it's given me a resolute calm in a nice way. The meetings that I'll have with people that have way more credits, I'll give you guys a little sneak peek. I had a call with Christine Vachon today. I don't know how to say her last name. She's the producer of like all of Todd Haynes movies and Brady Corbet's movies. So like Carol, like he's worked with Kate Blanchett a bunch of times, and the new Oscar nominee Brutalist is Brady Corbet. Vox Lux was his movie that I had seen. She was involved in After Sun, and she was just so easy and down to earth. And there's like only about 15 seconds of like that. Oh, I want to make sure I come across respectful and nice and diligent. But then the moment you're switching into talking about film and the industry, all of the status goes away. It just vanishes immediately. And I love that because I've always just been the type of personality of like humans being humans. There's just some that are really talented and ones that I want to work with, and others that are just not a flavor for me, but we're all kind of just figuring out life together. And me realizing that the ceiling of what I thought was achievable, that gap was much, much smaller than I realized. And that meeting happened literally just because of a cold email. All right, I think I'll end questions there unless you guys have any pressing ones that you would like to add on. But otherwise, I just want to thank everyone for the support for this project. We have a really, really exciting year ahead of us. I'll keep everyone up to date. The best ways to stay in the loop is either shoot me an email if you want to be added to the newsletter. I think most of you guys in there already. Follow us on social media. I'm always posting on the Instagram and the Facebook. Follow us on WeFunder. I'm going to continue those updates going even after the campaign closes. And then outside of that, always feel free to reach out to me. The campaign officially closes in 4 hours. And so if you do want to own a little piece of the movie, this is your last opportunity to do that. Once it closes, we're going to just keep it closed to the public. After this moment, it's you guys, the audience, will have bought your portion of the movie, and then we're going to go in other directions. So we're probably not going to open that up to the public ever again. So this is your last little window to buy into Starfish, and I am incredibly grateful for this entire journey, both personally, professionally, and the belief that you guys have had in this movie and this project, and I can't wait to bring it to life. If you have not gotten a chance to check out the proof of concept trailer, I highly encourage you to take a look at that. I'm really proud of how it came together. We shot it all in one day, and it has the impact and the feeling that I'm very excited to bring to people. All right. If there's no other questions, then we will leave it there. You guys are the best, and I will keep you posted. And otherwise, have an incredible Thursday night. Peace out.